Officer Richard Craig, a school resource officer in Avon, Indiana. He was chosen Region 5 SRO of the Year in 2022 by the National Association of School Resource Officers. Officer Craig, thanks for being there with us. We appreciate it. We're not going to get into all the legal aspects of the Peterson case here, but I wanted to get your perspective on the role school resource officers play. Do they work in terms of protecting students from mass shootings? Obviously, it's good to have a friendly face like yours in a school. It might offer some assurance to students to know there's a police officer there who's been designated as security for the student body. But does it work in a situation where you have a mass shooter there with an AR-15 or an assault-style rifle to have one officer there or a couple of officers there who may just be outgunned anyway? What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm an advocate for school resource officers in as many schools as possible. Depending on how that officer is trained, how that officer is selected. Like you said, in the event of an active shooter, if an SRO is running towards the threat, as the National Association of School Resource Officers trains most officers to do. Oftentimes you are outgunned, but that is part of the role. And I know that going into work each and every day, that's what I try to prepare myself for. But the key to that is going in the event that the unthinkable does happen, that I'm there to run towards that threat, to engage that threat. Because if I'm engaging that, God forbid, that person with an AR-15, they're focusing on me and not a student and not a teacher and not someone else that cannot defend themselves.
And you say you have to prepare for the what if, because many times you are the first responders. When you put on your gun in the morning, head off to the high school that you're there to protect, what do you say to yourself?
Absolutely. You do have to prepare for the what if. You have to prepare for the unthinkable. And as an SRO, if the job is done properly, you are a one-man band, for lack of a better term. NASRO teaches a triad model, which is a teacher, an informal counselor. Law enforcement really should be the smallest part of my job. And it is. I focus on relationship building. Because if I have good and positive relationships with my students, and my students in that building know that they can trust me, know that they can come to me with whatever, if they hear anything, and they come to me with a rumor or something they see on social media, they come to me and confide in me with that information. And because oftentimes, I don't know if you're a parent, Jim, or some of our viewers out there are parents. Oh, yeah. Kids are very concerned about snitching on each other. Like there's an unwritten rule amongst adolescents all the way up through high school about being a snitch. And if you hear something, there's this unwritten code that you don't snitch on someone. And it's right. that is sad. It really is sad, especially if it's something that involves maybe someone wanting to harm either themselves or someone else.
Let me ask you.
Coming into work every day. Yes.
Yeah. No, let me ask you about the Parkland case, because it has taken on new relevance after what took place in Uvalde, the massacre there. And you know that the officers there came under a heavy criticism because they did not charge in right away to help those children. And I'm just wondering your thoughts on that. What does your training tell you to do in a situation like that?
And again, I won't speak on each one of those cases directly, but I'm speaking from my own personal perspective and point of view and the training that I've received by the National Association of School Resource Officers. And that is, if there's an active shooter or some sort of, armed assailant that is in the building, that I am trained to quickly move towards that threat, neutralize that threat to hopefully prevent any further injury or loss of life. And that, I know that, my family knows that. That is what I leave when I leave the house each morning, going into work in a school. I know that this is part of the job. And as a dad myself, I look at each one of my students as one of my own children. And you have to take some sort of ownership if you are
And there are
willing
so
to
many
lay your
kids now
life
who
on
are
the
living
line.
and there are so many kids now who are living in this lockdown mode. You know, they've been traumatized to some
Yes.
extent. Even the kids who aren't even impacted by a school shooting or a mass shooting. You interact with these
Oh,
kids. What's that like for them?
absolutely. And I have an eighth grader myself, and she's affected by that. And it's sad that this is the world that our children are living in, that it's just part of their daily lives of going to school, that this is, the possibility of something like this happening is part of just what they think about, as far as what shoes they're wearing or what clothes they're wearing or who they have a crush on. Well, we might have to lock down inside of our classroom in the event that a shooter comes to the school. And that is where having these relationships, building relationships with students, is key. Because I have talked ad nauseum with students one on one about
Yeah.
just this, and I've talked through some of their fears and some of the trauma that's caused some students, especially in the event, in the wake of your Uvaldes or your Nashvilles, or anytime.
Right.
It seems like every time we turn around, there's another one, unfortunately. But
Yes.
our kids don't think that they don't know, that they're not listening, that they're not watching, because they see it. We as adults know, and we oftentimes we don't give our kids enough credit
Yeah.
that they're not up to speed with as much as they are.
Well, you have a very difficult job, Richard. Thanks very much for your time. Love to have you back and talk about this issue more. It's just so vitally important. We covered a lot here on the weekends because there have been so many of these types of shootings and massacres that take place, unfortunately, on the weekends when we're here covering the news live. But School Resource Officer Richard Craig, thanks so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.